Thank you so much for joining me today on the Soul2Soul Podcast. Kayla, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm very, very excited to chat to you, actually. You are the co-founder of Morning Light Studios here on the Sunshine Coast. And when I first met you, I was amazed at such a young age that you are so entrepreneurial. And so I wanted to start today by asking you, what was your inspiration around creating the studio?
It's really funny, actually. I remember being about 24, maybe around that age, and I was doing yoga and Pilates regularly as my own personal practice, and I was working as a nurse at the time. And I just had this knowing. I used to say to people, I'm going to open my own yoga and Pilates studio one day. And I would laugh at myself because I was like, I'm not even teaching it. Like I wanted to, and it was a part of what I had planned for myself. But I was currently at the time doing some postgraduate studies at uni for my nursing career. And it just hadn't aligned yet for me to do the trainings. And yeah, I always had this knowing, actually, I would say. And I used to actually reflect and say to myself, gosh, like how could you compete with this incredible studio, which was the one I was practicing at on the Gold Coast. And I would have that dialogue quite regularly with myself of like, this is such a beautiful space. Like I would never be able to really compete with this. And I moved not long after that to the Sunshine Coast. And when I first moved here, there really wasn't anything like what I was doing on the Gold Coast. And I was immediately felt really disheartened because I was like, oh, I've, put the last 7 years of my life into going and doing yoga and Pilates for something for myself and something that I had just finished studying. And there was nothing like it here. And my husband said to me, well, you can create your own. And I said, oh, it's funny you say that. Like that's always kind of been a dream of mine. And yeah, just over time, it just developed and kept curating inside me. And I always knew that it was something that I wanted to do. And we kind of set a 5-year plan, which still, I think would still be 2 years away had that we stuck to that rigid plan. But we're like, we'll get married first, we'll have a baby, then we'll do a business. And yeah, we kind of mapped that all out. And how it all came to be was really organic. We weren't looking for it to open a studio at any time, but basically we were presented with an opportunity to partner with someone, and it just kind of really fell into place. They'd already taken on a lease. They didn't really know what they were doing, and they don't even teach yoga and Pilates, and they were looking for someone with the expertise that I had. And I was increasingly getting frustrated with my nursing career and wanting to change and wanting to do more of what was really lighting me up, which was yoga and Pilates. And so it actually all fell into place really organically. From first conversation to 10 weeks later, we'd open the studio. So it was very quick.
That's really a sign of when life actually meets you and actually mirrors what your desires are within your heart. And I love that it happened easily, or maybe it didn't happen easily, but happened. The opportunity was presented and you recognized that's what I want. That's what I wanted.
I mean, look, in the moment I was only like just turned 27, and there was a lot of resistance of my own, inner critic of that I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, or a lot of that imposter syndrome was definitely coming up at the time. And I remember I was going through, like, I've got like 100 packets of oracle cards, and I was trying to find one to say like don't do it, or it was like something like a sign. And every card I would pull was like abundance is coming, or new adventure, or take a leap of faith. And I was like, oh, stupid. And I was like, I'll go to the different pack, and I couldn't get one single card that would say something negative. Like every single card was like aligned to like do it. And I remember having an energy healing with this lady that I would see quite regularly, and she said to me, she's quite a clairvoyant lady, and she said to me, I don't normally tell people to do things, but I'm getting a really strong message from spirit that you need to do this. And it's kind of like you're always going to do this anyway, and it's a part of your destiny and it's a part of your path, but you get to choose now. Do you want the full expression of what it could be, or do you want to take the watered down variation later in life because you've kind of second guessed yourself? And I was like, well, I don't really want the watered down version. She's like, well, there you go. And I would like tell my friends as well. I'd be like, oh, so I think I'm going to open a yoga and Pilates studio. And they were like, oh my God, of course. Like that. And I was like, oh, I was kind of banking on you to say like, oh, like, that's not a good idea. Or I was just hoping someone would tell me like, I don't know. I was so caught up in my own mind and not connected to my heart at the moment. But once I said yes, and once I was like, all right, let's do it, it just all went whew, and fell into place. So yeah, there was a lot of ease and grace with it all. And I remember my teacher once said to me, you know, the way that karma works is that there's so many unmanifested seeds of potential within us, just waiting for us to take the right step or the right action for that to blossom and bloom. And sometimes we can be really unsure of, you know, the information that we need. And as soon as we lean in and say yes, it's like that download drops down and we just suddenly embody what we need to know. And I feel like that is exactly what happened. I was so like, oh, I don't know how to run a business. And then as soon as I said yes, it was like, oh, well, we've got to do this. And I just somehow like knew. And it was like, oh, I don't know where that came from, but it just like bred through me. And yeah, it's interesting how it all works.
Well, when I was 24, I was still trying to get my act together with my life. So it's it actually is a huge commitment to say yes to creating a business. So kudos to you. And I wanted to just go back to partway through your conversation. I wanted to ask you what actually was the clincher for you to say yes? What motivated you to say, you know what, I'm going to give this a go and see what happens?
I think I knew just so deep down that I had had such a transformational experience in my own life from my own practices. And I felt indebted to yoga and Pilates for what it had done for me. And I've always said, the only reason I teach this is because it's been so profound in my own healing, in my own life. And I feel it's like I'd be doing society a disservice if I didn't then share the gifts that I'd received from it. So I feel part of it was like, if I could just get out of my own way and my own fears, it's like beyond that is this potential to help so many people. And not only just clients, but you know, creating a business means that you create opportunities for other people who maybe don't have the drive to open their own business but have an incredible passion to want to still share yoga and Pilates, or you know, like yourself coming in to run an event in a couple on the weekend actually. So I just felt like if I can just get out of my own way, there's so much beauty for the whole world to benefit from me actually saying yes to this. So I'm just, you know, part of the creator, but beyond that is going to benefit everyone. And I think that was probably the main thing of like, just get out of your own way, think about beyond yourself, like how will this actually be beneficial to the world?
I've often heard that having a business is actually the biggest growth experience for you as an individual. I'm wondering, upon reflection from inception to now, how have you grown as a person?
Oh gosh, I would so agree with that. I remember actually one of my mentors said to me one day, you know, running a business is so many people think it's all this stuff, and but what it really is your main role is just solving problems. And I think it's so true. Like every day you're presented with, you know, not necessarily big problems, but you're in the service of relationships and helping people. And you know, I've got a staff of 17 teachers that work with us, and a manager and a business partner. So you are really in relationship with people. And I think that's what a business is, or when it's run well, is all about building relationships. And I'm sure you would know relationships are really often mirroring back to us our own stuff and our own self. So I think it's this constant reflection of like, okay, I could have done that better. I could have said that better. Or, okay, you know, having to adapt and grow really all the time. And, you know, we were only 6 months old when we had the first lockdown with all the COVID stuff. So that was a really big thing. It was like, okay, here's a problem. I either have a breakdown and, you know, get swept into the drama of it all, or, okay, I put all my offerings online and we go that way. And that's what we did. And I think, you know, you always met with the fork road of choices in business of where to go and what to do. And I think the biggest thing for me is really finding my own voice as a, as a leader, and trying to empower and uplift my teachers so they can also be the best versions of themselves. And I think it's challenging at times because, we're all human beings, and some days I have off days too, and I might have like 4 messages from teachers wanting different things for me, or a client's wanting something, or, you're wearing so many hats as a business owner, and especially on a small scale like my business. Like, I'm HR, I'm also the payroll, I'm also, it's like you've got so many different hats that you're wearing at all times. And I think so many expectations on you. And I think it can really make or break people, because there are a lot of opinions and a lot of expectations of clients, and teachers want things a certain way. And then, so I think there's been so many opportunities for growth, but really just I would say the main thing is, building relationships and maintaining healthy relationships and boundaries within those relationships. And probably one of my biggest challenges is I'm so friendly and I befriend all of our teachers. And then I find that hard at times to put my opposite hat on and go, okay, well, that wasn't really great. Can you work better at this? And so that's been a big thing for me, actually, is flipping between, being really friendly and also having to put my business hat on and go, okay, well, we are a business at the end of the day. We have to operate like a business. And so that's something I'm definitely working on at the moment.
Creating boundaries. It's interesting, isn't it? And I think as we get older, it's something that with time, we start to kind of put our own flavour into it and be able to show up and also feel like we're honouring our essence, comes with time. It's taken me years, and even still now, having those conversations, it still sometimes feels icky and tricky. And so I've learnt to just create an intention around how I would like the outcome of the conversation to be, and then trust the flow, and see. Otherwise I would probably sit in this angst of not being a people pleaser, of not wanting that person to be upset.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's an art as well. Like, something that we've recently introduced is giving feedback, like staff feedback forms. So whenever myself or anyone comes to another teacher's class, the expectation is that they fill out a staff feedback form, and it's, critiquing. It's, mostly all positive stuff, but there's opportunity at the bottom for, like, can you provide any constructive feedback? And it's really interesting watching, because I love receiving feedback, and I think it's how we grow. And if we often get blindsided by our own kind of limitations, or the areas that we need to work on. It's been really interesting, like, witnessing how some people are so resistant to having this feedback. They're like, oh, and they don't even want, like, they kind of run out the door before you've even given it to them. And like, it's all going to be mostly positive stuff. There might just be a thing here or there that can help you grow as a person, really. And it is interesting because it's an art, because I've really been sitting with that people pleasing thing lately of like, oh, if I don't give this person the right feedback, like, I'm actually doing them a disservice as well, because they're obviously, they can't see what I'm seeing from the outside perspective often. So I've really been sitting with that a lot of, like, how can I be genuine? How can I stay true to my own center, and also honor this person on their own journey and where they're at with their experience, and at the same time help them grow and evolve too.
And that's so beautiful. And I think if they felt that, and they knew that's where you were coming from, it's a much softer space to sit in and have that conversation, isn't it? In segueing to personal relationships, I know that with my husband and myself, we've been together now 18 years married last week.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And we now, as our marriage has evolved, you learn to communicate with each other, and we communicate completely differently now than we did, when we first got together. And we were nearly 30 when we got together. So we were that's a different stage in life itself. And I know now when we sit and we have conversations that are matters of the heart, we both really come from a place of, I want what's best for you as well as what's best for me. So how can we come to an agreement on what we're both happy with? And it may not be what I want. It may not be what he wants, but because we both want to come to an agreement where we're both in agreement, it may be a completely different solution again. And I know for us that works really well, because when we both want the other to be happy, you find a solution, you find something, and people call it compromise, but I don't know if I call it compromise. I think it's really just intending to walk together on your path as authentically as possible.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And I think as well, like when you come together, you may have been this person at that stage in life, and then we're growing, we're evolving. Like my husband and I have been together for almost 6 years now, and who I was at the 24-year-old when we met to now, I'm a completely different person. And it's like so many people, I remember being younger particularly, you'd hear people say, oh, you've changed. It's like, well, if we're not growing, we're dying. It's like, of course I've changed. Like it would be actually hurtful for someone to say that I haven't changed, because I feel like it's a part of our natural progression in life is to be growing and expanding and shedding parts of ourselves that no longer align. And I would hate to think that I've become stagnant and the same person year after year after year. I hope that I'm growing and evolving. And I think it'd be ignorant to assume in a relationship that our relationship won't evolve, because we're all on our own different unique paths, and you've got your path together. And I think it's so beautiful when they can interweave. And I know for my husband and I, sometimes we go off path, and he's got a completely different interest to me, similar values and essences. He studies Kung Fu, I study yoga and Pilates, so they're very similar. And he might be really focused over here, and I might be really focused over here, but we always interweave back together. And it's that dance of setting them free to do their own thing, and then coming back to, as long as your values are aligned and, you are making time for one another in a way that feels relevant for you and your relationship. I think it's important to, weave in and out. And something that we are also really great at is communicating and getting really clear on where are we at? What are we doing? We check in all the time. That's something we really pride ourselves on, is being good communicators. And I definitely have been in relationships where that wasn't the case. And it's such a breath of fresh air to have someone that you just trust so much, and that you can, talk to things about, and feel safe to know that you're actually able to go off on your own path and be trusted to, do what feels good for you, because we're all unique souls in this beautiful journey of life. And to go on your own path, but together, I think is so powerful.
There's a certain magic in the bond, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I really believe that with time, that bond strengthens, because you are navigating the highs and the lows. And it really is the lows that bring you closer together if you choose to navigate it together.
Definitely.
And it's not always easy. And I don't want people to think that it's easy, but I think when you commit to growing through those times of struggle, you learn so much more about yourself in a way that you can't learn unless you struggle. And you come on the other side, and when you have that other person with you on that journey, whatever that journey is for the time being, you then realize that you have that person that has your back. It's so beautiful. And then when you have that in your external group of relationships as well, with your friendships, with your children, as you go on to have children, you then start to build this little posse. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say as well, like I know in my friendship circle, I've got friends that have partners that are similar essence to my relationship, and others that are not. And I think it really comes back to understanding your own values and your values together as a couple or your relationships with your friends, and getting really clear on that, because so many people, I think, if you want to ask them what are your values in life, like they're not even really sure. And I think that's where relationships are so powerful, because you have the opportunity to really go, oh, well, what is it about that triggered me today? Or, okay, well, that didn't align with me because XYZ. And so I think, yeah, getting clear on your own values helps you set these healthy boundaries that we're talking about, because if you don't know your own values, it's really hard to make that distinguishment of even putting a boundary in place in the first place.
How did yoga and Pilates come to find you?
Well, I've been doing Pilates since I was 10. My mum, she loved all of those like late night infomercials, and she'd bought some, I think like the Windsor Pilates DVD set, and which she was like quite a big American lady at the kind of, brought a Pilates to the West, I think. So I used to do the DVDs with my mum, like she was doing them every day, and I used to absolutely love it. And I remember being about 10 years old, and I would actually take the DVDs to my friends' houses and I'd run them through a little Pilates PT session, and because I knew all the moves, I felt really good at it. So that was originally how I got into Pilates. And then my mum actually, again, probably watching a late night infomercial, had bought a reformer Pilates machine, and I didn't really know how to use it, but I just used to love playing around on it. And she had like a poster, and I would do that every day because I did dancing as well. So I was always told Pilates and dancing go really well together. So that was originally how I got into Pilates. And then when I was probably in my late teens, again, I picked it up when I joined the gym. They had Pilates classes, and I was like, I love Pilates. Like, so I started doing it again there. But then I found a studio, which was my studio that I ended up going to for about 8 years on the Gold Coast, Essence of Living. And they taught bar classes. So I'd done ballet since I was 3 to about 14. And bar, if you're not familiar with it, it is a ballet-inspired Pilates. So I was like, my 2 favorite things, oh my gosh, all in one. And I absolutely just loved it. It felt, for the first time ever, like I was doing exercise that I actually enjoyed, because before that I was kind of at the gym and I was doing this other stuff and boot camps, and I actually hated it, and it was more out of a self-loathing that I was going than I actually enjoyed doing it. And so doing these bar classes, I was like, wow, this is like the funnest thing ever. It kind of felt like a bit of an upbeat dance class, and it was, quite an intense practice. So I was like, oh, this is the best. And my teacher, actually, who owned the studio, said to me, I think we were doing a stretch and I was really struggling. I was really stiff in my hips. And she said, why don't you come to a yoga class? It'd be really good to get your hips all stretched out. And I was like, oh, I hate yoga.
Hello.
Holding it. And I was like, oh, I hate yoga. And I tried it before at the gym back in the day. And there's my husband. And
very
stealthy.
smooth. I love it.
Yeah, and I tried it before and I really didn't like it. I was had a lot of anxiety and found it incredibly challenging to sit in stillness and to be with myself, really. So I didn't like it. I was like, oh, this isn't for me. And I think on an intuitive level, my teacher, she's incredibly gifted. I think she could just see, I think she was just connecting with me as a person, and said, I really would love for you to come. Like, you'll really like it. And I was like, okay, I'll go. And again, I really didn't enjoy it. I found it really challenging, not in the physical practice, more in the mental practice of just being still. But there was something a bit different this time. The studio that I was at was very philosophical, and they were implanting a lot of really beautiful philosophies into the practices, which I hadn't kind of experienced before. And it was just enough for me to understand that, okay, even though I'm really struggling right now, this is something really beautiful. And again, my teacher, I think, just being really intuitive and kind of reading the room, I said to her, oh, I find it really hard, because I was doing the beginner classes. And she said, well, why don't you come to these other classes, which were the more kind of open level classes? And they were a little bit more fast paced and they had a bit more energy to them. And I think that was enough to captivate me, just to keep me kind of entrained in it all, as my nervous system then started to obviously settle over time, and I was less reactive and more comfortable sitting with myself. That's where the true beauty came in. But initially it was really hard. I really found it a deep struggle, and took me years to actually find this ability to just be at ease sitting. I would always think at the start of the classes, they'd always do like a 5-10 minute meditation breathwork practice, and I'd be like, oh my God, like what? Like, what are we doing this for? I was like, come on, I just want to get into the movement. And I used to say to people, oh no, I don't need to meditate because I do moving meditation. And now I understand that, that was just, again, an illusion of myself trying to not have to sit with myself. But yeah, so it kind of all came to me in that way, I guess.
And for somebody that's listening to this episode today, because what you're sharing with me, I hear all the time, and you're reminding me of my daughter. My eldest daughter loves exercise, loves Pilates, and loves coming to yoga. Anything to do with meditation? No, Mum, I'm not coming to meditation circles. I can't lie there for that long. And so, it's a common story that I hear where people are, it's either scary to sit with our thoughts, or there's some sort of resistance. And so for anybody who perhaps is curious about meditation or yoga, but has that resistance, what would you say to them to help them to understand the bigger picture?
Well, I often think our practices meet us where we're at. And that's what I love about yoga, is there are so many variations of yoga to meet you where you are at in the moment. And had I just started with just meditation, I would have given up. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have even started my journey, because it would have been so overwhelming for me. From my own personal experience, I had a really active nervous system and a lot of mental stimulation. And in that sense, doing the physical practices were really beneficial for me, because the whole essence of the asana, the yoga practice, is to help purify the body. And so we want to settle the nervous system and, re-regulate everything, so you are able to sit and to find some sense of stillness. And there's a whole a yoga sutra book which has 196 threads or sutras. And the second one is that yoga is a cessation of fluctuation of thought in the mind. And that's basically the second one in. So it's like, if we could just do that, then we've done yoga. But then he goes on with an extra 194 to explain well, that's clearly not going to be accessible to most people. So here are the steps. And, the physical practice is so beautiful. And I think it comes back to just the baby steps, like starting with, okay, why is it that I'm having resistance? Is it because my mind's really busy? Okay, well, why is my mind busy? I mean, it's hard in this world that we live in for it not to be busy. There's so much external distractions and things that are constantly pulling us away from ourselves. So our minds are naturally already busy. I think I read a study, it's about maybe 3 years ago, that said that the average American, so I would assume that we're much the same, has an attention span of 7 seconds. And the most recent variation of the study has come back to say it's now actually 4 seconds. So in 3 years, we've gone from 7 seconds to 4 seconds, which is pretty, so it's hard. It's not easy to meditate when we have so many external things. And then add on top of that, all of our internal experiences that are going on as well. So I think creating safety within ourselves is really important. And I think for a lot of people, that is through movement. And I don't think there's anything specifically wrong with that if it is through movement, as long as you then pair that with, okay, I'm going to create some space where I just be. We're all just moving the whole time. We're not really giving ourselves the opportunity to uncover and unpack what's there. And, true meditation would obviously be still. But not everyone's there. And I think not holding this harsh expectation on ourselves that we have to be able to lie still for 2 hours or an hour or 10 minutes even, because not everyone is able to do that. And there's so many variations of ways that we can meditate. The Buddhists are really into walking meditation, and but I just say to so many of my clients is, how can we create less distraction in our life? Like, we're so glued to our phones all the time. We're so entrenched in TV stories and dramas on, online, and then we get in the car, we've got the radio or a podcast on, and so it's like just trying to create some space in our life where we're reducing the mental stimulation. And the more we do that, the more we actually feel comfortable and safe within ourselves to keep doing that. And I find, for me anyway, and from many conversations I've had, is the more space we create and the more comfort we feel in that space, the more we'll actually start craving that space. I know, like, when I go out, I've had too much stimulation in my week, I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Like, I just want to go sit by myself and just turn everything off and have a moment. But I think it can take time for a lot of people, and in saying that, not everyone needs that time. Some people just naturally have the capacity and the willpower and the drive to want to sit and to be in silence. So it really depends on, I think, so many moving facets. It's not just one way is the easy way to do it. It's like there's so many ways that we can show up and be present. And I think it just comes back to that discipline, and also I guess asking why, like why would this benefit me? And the more we ask these questions and contemplate, the more the answers will keep revealing to us. And I think from that space, once you have a compelling why, it's really easy to show up for something. But when we don't know why we're doing something, or if it's just been thrown around as, oh, meditation's this really cool buzzword now, it's like, it doesn't resonate specifically with everyone. So, my journey was very much movement based, and, it took me about 5 years to actually feel comfortable sitting, and, and not every day is comfortable either. So I'll also say that, even as an experienced meditator and an experienced practitioner, there's many, many, many days that I show up and I'm like, oh my God, and it's hard. And I'm having to sit with all this discomfort, and my body's responding in different ways. And I'm thinking, like, I'm not cut out for this. And then it's just that constant softening and going, well, every meditation is a good meditation. There's no right or wrong. There's a teaching in yoga that's about the right amount of effort and the right amount of surrender. And so we want to show up consistently, and we put the effort in, but surrender to whatever shows up in the moment. It doesn't always have to be this. And I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have a blissful, experience as you read these books, and it's like, oh, meditation's bliss, and they use all these really lovely words, and it's like, that's not the reality for most people. Most people, it's just sitting and watching the thoughts. And I'd say for most people, meditation's a concentration practice, just concentrating, oh, that's right, I'm coming back to my breath, that's right, I'm meditating, and just being the witness to what's showing up.
And interestingly enough, and not ironic with your dog barking in the background, the distractions are important too. Life, we have many distractions in life, and we can't always control when we sit down to meditate whether it's going to be quiet, if we want it to be quiet, right? Mm-hmm. And some people don't often have that opportunity to sit in silence. They may have a house full of kids running around, yet they still may want to have that practice or have a few minutes with themselves. And sometimes it's just sitting with a cup of tea.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's just checking in with your breath. I know for myself, when my daughters were younger, it was about finding pockets of time through my day. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I thought, well, what are the things I'm doing every day that I know I'm going to do? And they were actually what people would call chores: washing the dishes, hanging the clothes on the line. I knew that I would be doing that on a daily basis. So I decided to just check in with my breath when I was doing those activities. And that was really powerful, because I would ask those questions of myself: how are you feeling, Kay? And then that turned into a meditative practice for me. So over time, my body was like, right, we're going to hang the clothes on the line. We get to reflect. And it turned into something that I looked forward to doing. And even now, when my husband's mainly the dishwasher in the house, when I hang the clothes out, it's really a calming experience.
One of my teachers would call that islands of serenity, creating many islands of serenity in your day where it could be a minute, it could be 5, but I actually used to set little alarms on my phone every hour, and I'd have questions like, how are you feeling? Would be like the pop up, or stop and take 10 deep breaths, and they go off throughout the day. It's just these little it's because we get so busy just in life. And I think, everyone you speak to has got the same story. Gosh, life's busy. And it doesn't matter what we seem to do to pull back from that busyness. It's like the waves, they just keep coming. So creating these little moments of serenity in your life where you can just stop, pause, check in, and whether it's the breath or just observing, how am I feeling in this moment, or how am I responding to my experience right now? Because so often we miss so much of life because we're in the mind and we're not present in what we're doing, and there's just this constant dialogue. Said that we have over 62,000 thoughts a day, and majority of them are the same ones, just on repeat. And that's mind-blowing to think that we spend so much time in our head and not enough time in our bodies and in our hearts. And I think when we can do that, I think that's such a beautiful practice, because, as a mum, I'm sure it's incredibly busy. There's always things to be done. It's like, that's a real, you've got choices there. You can either show up and go, oh, I'm doing the dishes, I hate the dishes, and creating more tension in your life, more stress. Or you can go, great, I'm going to connect to myself here. And that's a beautiful practice. And I think for any mums listening, or even anyone that just, feels busy in their life, it's like, how can you find the beauty in every day? Because there's so much beauty to be accessed in the world at any given moment. And we miss it so often because we're stuck in the vortex of thinking and stress. It's like we become so stressed every day. And so often we're not even aware, these practices like checking in. I would notice I'm standing at the shops, I'm doing something, buying nourishing food, and feel my shoulders rising, and only noticed it because my phone went off to tell me to check my energy in that moment. I'm like, oh, my body's responding in a really weird way right now, and I'm not mentally stressed, but my body is like, oh. And then you can go, okay, well, I'm actually not stressed. For whatever reason, my body is feeling a little bit funny right now. So I'm going to breathe. I'm going to remind myself that I'm safe. And those little practices, I think safety is such a big part of us, feeling at ease in our bodies and in our mind. And there's so much unconscious stress that goes on that becomes imprinted within us, whether that's from past experiences or just the collective energy. We're constantly vibrating off one another, and so yeah, I really, really love that practice that you do.
I think for me, because I probably found this path through motherhood. Motherhood probably was the initiation for me. So I came to this at a later time in my life. And so I wanted to find ways where, I could integrate that into my life. And now for me, it's showing up. I take total ownership. This is the life that I'm living. These are the choices that I've made, because I don't in any way want to say, well, I don't want to drive my kid to drop off a pickup every day. That's an interruption to my day. I want to own every moment. Okay, how am I going to show up on the drive to school? How am I going to show up on the drive back? And when I started to look at it like that, there was so much more of an appreciation of my life. So driving my daughter to school this morning, we drive through these beautiful trees. And I say to her now, I love driving you to school because I get to drive through these trees. And so just kind of finding a way to reframe things from being a bit of a downer to more uplifting.
Absolutely.
Impacts my energy. And so for me, it's about, okay, finding ways to feel good as much as possible. And then from that, life just seems to be smoother when I focus on feeling good.
Yeah, well, I mean, our language is just a vibration out into the world. It's like everything we think, everything we say out loud, it's all sending this vibrational essence out into the world. And, you know, I truly believe we're attracting and repelling based off our own vibration. And it's like, you know, something that I do as well is like, I used to say like, oh, I have to do this. Now I'm like, oh, I get to do this. Like, and it's like, not everyone has this opportunity that I have right now. And if I don't take, you know, full responsibility for the life I've created, then I'm just kind of moving through life aimlessly. But if you take radical responsibility, that and it's empowering living from that place, I think, because that way, you know, you've got choice, and you feel that, you know, there's always an opportunity to grow from that place rather than kind of being a victim to your circumstances. And because life isn't always smooth sailing, there's always going to be things that, you know, come up. And it's like when you really flip the dialogue of like, oh, well, that's cool. Like, instead of, oh, this really sucks, like, well, how can I grow from this? Or, you know, oh, well, what's actually really positive about this experience? You know, driving your kids to school, I get to spend time with my daughter. I get to observe the trees. I get actually a moment where I'm in the car just being quiet and on the way home or whatever it is. Yeah, there's so much beauty to be found in life if we look for it.
I think so. And that brings me back full circle to the beginning of our conversation where you were sharing that somebody shared with you about businesses being problems arising.
Yeah,
It's the same for life.
absolutely.
You know, things come up and we get to choose how we want to show up
Mm-hmm.
for whatever's coming up for you. You know, I mean, I love to plan and I love routine. And right now in my life, it's all just like up in the air. And this morning I said to myself, now we know you like the comfort and familiarity of having your routine, and that gives you a sense of peace, Kay. It's also okay for you not to be in routine. It's like, do you know what I mean? So for now, for me, it's kind of like, well, how can I just be present right now? Because this conversation with you is what matters most. And then we'll move on. And it's so interesting when you can be in that space, even though I know that there's other things to focus on at a different time. It's really, really interesting when you can just say, I'm just going to own the space I'm in now. And because other opportunities can come from that, which we can't even imagine, and then impact all the other areas of our lives, or the problems we might be thinking about, you know, they can get solved by us just being present.
I remember I had an analogy once where it was like when you're committing to doing something, whether that's, you know, meditation or yoga, or you might be washing your dishes, and really becoming present with that thing, and almost imagining that you've got a little sailboat, and everything else that you're thinking about, you can place it on that sailboat and just watch it drift off into the horizon. And if it's, you know, if that stuff is important, it'll come back, and if it's not, like, just let it go. And I think we spend so much of our time either future forecasting or back in the past, and we can't change either of those things. Really all we have is this moment right now, and it's like we miss it so often. It's just gone, and it's like, well, can we just get out of our own heads and back into the present moment and really be observant of what's happening? And, you know, running a business particularly, you've got so many moving parts at all times, and especially having so many staff and different events and many different clients, there's so many opportunities to get swept up into something else. But it's like, okay, what am I doing right now? And then you're more productive in that sense as well, because you are, you know, you're being present, you're being focused, and your energy is not being dispersed into so many different places. And I think being a nurse actually really helped with that skill set for me. I think, you know, I was an emergency nurse, and there's really one task at hand. It's like, who is in front of me right now? What's their problem? How can I help solve it? Or who do I need to outsource to help solve this? Or so I think that was a really great training ground for me in business. And people would often say to me, oh, but you studied all that time, and, you know, you're letting go of a 10-year career. And I was like, yeah, but it's all part and parcel. It's helped me to get to where I am today. And most people don't really understand that. But I'm like, the skills that I learned as a nurse, like you've got to be so your time management has to be really good. You have to be really present because you're, you know, um, assessing clients all the time. And it really has actually helped me in many ways.
I believe that everything that happens in our life is happening to set us up for the next chapter. Whether we can rationalize that or not, when we look back, we realize, oh, wow, these are the skills that I've brought into this chapter. And then we just keep building on that.
Definitely.
I want to thank you, Kayla, for your time today. I've really loved listening to your words of wisdom. You're very wise. And I love how reflective you are. And I think back and I go, wow, I wish I was that wise when I was when I was your age. Pardon?
Sure you were.
In different ways. And I love, though, that young people especially can relate to someone like you. You know, I'm thinking of my daughters. When I think of that, I think it's awesome that young people have role models like yourself to be able to look up to. I think it's really important, no matter as a mother how we want to be that role model, and we are. There's also that part of the population where it's peer related. And where that influence comes from your peers. So thank you so much. I know you will be inspiring, empowering, and motivating many people through your studio. And to whoever's going to listen and watch this interview, I know too you are going to be dropping some little wisdom bombs and giving people things to think about when it comes to reflecting on their own lives and how they want to show up. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll just say as well, you know, it's an unfolding journey. And I've certainly in my younger age had many, many experiences in life where I wasn't so wise. And I haven't always had this reflective nature. And it's something that I've had to really work towards and be disciplined to have that reflection, because I definitely know when I was younger, I was a big player in my own victim mentality and swept up in that story. And it's like taking that radical responsibility for your life and for how you want to live your life. And I would often say, like, when I was younger, like, oh, it's not fair, I wish I could. But it's like, well, sometimes life isn't fair. And we get to also at any time course correct. And you know, I actually grew up with a fair bit of trauma in my childhood, and many would say that that would be an indicator of where my life would go. But I chose in that moment, I don't want to create this for myself again. And I think for anyone that is listening that is younger and maybe not on the path that they want to be on, there's always the opportunity to change course. You can always change. And I think, I mean, even if you're older, it doesn't just apply to young people. Yeah, we write our own stories, and yeah, I guess that's all I had to say about that.
I had that conversation with my daughter just this week, my youngest daughter, that it's okay to change your mind. Even if you decide to not do something, it's okay to change your mind and then do that thing again. It's always okay.
Definitely.
So I love that you have brought that up, because I think that's really important.
Definitely. I think what's meant for us won't pass us, even if it takes a little bit of effort to get there. I often think of the lotus in the mud. Starts down deep in the darkest despair, and it actually has to chase the light to get to this full expression of itself, to blossom open. And sometimes the wisest people come from those darkest places, and actually most times. So struggle and the challenge that we go through actually has the greatest capacity to either make us or, you know, keep us following in that same dark path. So wherever you are in your journey, there's always the opportunity to flip the story and move in a different direction. And it's not easy. It's, you know, but I think all things that are worth doing, you know, they take effort. Something that my teacher would often say to me is, it's simple, not easy.
True. And I think for myself, it's been worth the effort.
Oh, yeah.
It's been worth the effort. And anybody that you look up to as a mentor, I just want you to know, if you're listening, it means that they're teaching from lived experience.
Yeah.
And we can't teach unless we've navigated it ourselves in our lives.
Definitely. And I think as well, having a mentor is so powerful. So many people, I see this really common phrase at the moment. It actually annoys me a lot. I'm self-made. I'm like, well, you know, someone in some way, shape, or form has inspired you. You've in some
True.
way had an experience that has awakened something within you. But there's a bit of an aversion in, I think, younger people or to have a mentor, but having a mentor is your greatest ally. They, you know, in yoga, the word for it is a guru. And guru translates to someone who removes the mud or the goo from our eyes so we can see the light within. I
I
think
love that.
mentor helps you see the real from the unreal, and it helps you find those blind spots that you're not able to see within yourself. And a true mentor won't show you how to do it, but they'll hold the space for you to find it for yourself. And that's powerful.
So, so powerful. On that note, thank you so much.
Thank you.